radio for the Generation X audience and beyond who have conservative values. Now, here's the host of Exservatives Talk, Donald Thornton.
All right, good afternoon, DFW, the Metroplex, and on the word, FM.com. Welcome to the whole wide world. You are listening to Talk Radio of the Future Today, the new voice and face of conservatism for the 21st century and beyond. Well, I want to say happy Memorial Day to all our soldiers out there. I know everybody's getting their pits warmed up, getting the ribs and the pork and the brisket all prepared. But while you're doing that, take the time to thank our soldiers for the sacrifice that they paid for our freedom to have those barbecues. So I want to say again, thanks to all the soldiers who've given their life in price, and the soldiers in my family who've given their sacrifice of time and blood and sweat and even the very life for our freedom. All right, well, Tuesday is primary day in Texas. If you haven't voted already, I think our early voting ended on Friday, so Tuesday is primary day. I want you to get out there and vote. It is very, very important that we vote and get out there and make our voices heard. You've often heard me talk about on the show several times about the lack of passionate conservatism that we have in the Republican Party. And as I've said before, I've told you I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent. I voted Republican because they fit the value, their platforms fitted the values that I believe in. But I'm often concerned because I see a lack of passion as far as conservatism is concerned, social conservatism, political conservatism. And we need that. I was talking a couple of weeks ago about Paul Ryan when he's talking about his budget and how it was great for the future of our nation. But when he presented it, man, it was like listening to sesame seeds. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, the facts that he gave were correct and all, but he had no passion with which he brought that budget proposal. And that's what I'm talking about. We need people who have a passionate conservatism for the ideals that we know are and have been proven successful for this nation. Well, my guest today exemplifies that passionate conservatism, and he wants to be the next U.S. Congressman representing the 24th District of Texas. Grant Stinchfield. He is a GOP candidate for the U.S. Congress for District 24. Grant, welcome to the show. Glad you came in studio, sir.
Donald, it's great to be back again. Thanks for having me.
I am glad to have you back in. We had you in a few months ago, man. You had just started your campaign?
Yeah, we had just started, and we've made great strides since we were in here before. And you know what? You want to talk about passion? I know you got a webcam up. I'm wearing an Everlast hat. You see this? For all those fight fans out there, this is what boxing gear is made from.
That's right.
And it's no coincidence I'm wearing that. I'm in the fight of my life right now. And I do believe that you are exactly right. The conservatives in Washington are not putting up the fight. They're not showing the passion, which makes conservative values so great, and letting the world know why conservative values are so great, and the entrepreneurial spirit that this country was built on, and how great it is, and how we can bring this country back from the brink. And we got to be out there hammering it. And that's what I plan to do when I go to Washington.
All right. Well, I wanted to have you in here for those who may be undecided or on the fence about who they're going to vote for, because I want them to hear from you. I want them to hear your passion. I want them to hear why you want to go to Washington and why you're going to make a difference. Because as we've seen with our current, like I call him Ghost Congressman, Kenny Merchant, that, man, once you get up there, dude, they disappear. They get involved in the whole shenanigan of Washington. And this guy, I mean, I've been trying to contact this guy. We've been on the radio for 3 years. I've been trying to contact Kenny Merchant for 3 years.
And nothing.
Nothing. And I think that's ridiculous. But let's talk about you for a second.
Well, you know what, Donald? I've been trying to contact him for 9 months. I actually put up a billboard in his hometown that says, Representative Marchant, why won't you debate me?
Right.
Because I think the people have a right to hear the issues. And a show like this is a great outlet. Why couldn't he even call in on the phone on a Sunday and let's talk about the issues?
Right.
Let's talk about why I'm the better candidate. He doesn't want to talk about it because he can't win that fight.
Even one of his representatives, I contacted his campaign manager, nothing.
Yeah.
And that's a sad state of affairs. That lets you know what he thinks about his position and what he thinks about his constituents. Not even willing to call in and talk about the situation.
Well, I truly believe he is simply counting on the people's vote while I'm out there working hard for it.
Right. And that's why I believe you would be a great representative of U.S. District 24, which is actually my district. I live in Coppell. But let's talk about some of the things that has happened since the last time you were in studio. Man, you won the Saddle Up Texas straw poll with 66% of the vote over Merchant's 33%. You won the Tarrant County GOP straw poll with 57% of the vote. You got the endorsement of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, which is no sneezing at. I mean, that's great. The Electoral Board endorsed you. I mean, and a whole litany of endorsements from personal figures. What caused that to happen, Grant? I mean, you were basically, nobody knew who you were. Obviously, maybe people who were in the news industry, they knew who you were, but nobody knew who you were months ago. But now you've gotten all these accolades, these endorsements. How did that happen?
It was amazing. We started this campaign, and really nobody knew we were running or why we were running. And, you're going to challenge an incumbent. Okay, good luck. Right. But as 9 months went on and we started to raise more and more money, and guys like Roger Staubach come out and endorse me, and Ray Hunt, and so many business leaders in Dallas, people started to take notice that maybe this guy's for real. Mm-hmm. And then I go around to places like the straw poll, the GOP straw poll in Tarrant County, and you're meeting everyday folks face to face, and I'm telling them about the mess that career politicians have gotten us into.
Right.
And that it's time that we put national interest over self-interest, that we put transparency over secrecy. And this message started to resonate with folks all the way to the point where we get an endorsement from the Star-Telegram. I don't think they've endorsed an incumbent since Lord knows when.
Wow.
And so we're real happy about it. And I think everybody is just really angry with what's going on in Washington. And so you talk about do-nothing politicians. I put Kenny Marchant at the top of the list of do-nothing congressmen in Washington. Right. He doesn't have any bills passed. He's not out there fighting the battles. And that is not getting the war won that's going on in Washington. There's a war on prosperity. We need people out there fighting. So I've said I'd use my skills as an investigative reporter to uncover and expose waste, fraud, and abuse. And more importantly, Donald, as a radio man, we got to communicate those issues back to the district in a compelling fashion that lets everybody, not just conservatives, but even people to the left of our party know why this is a better way for the country. And instead of burying our heads in the sand, we got to be out there on top of the mountain screaming and yelling. And I think the time is now, and I think people are ready for a change. I really do. Everywhere I go, they've been saying they are ready to get those career politicians out of office.
And you're right. I mean, talking about his record, I believe the Texas Tribune talked about the fact that he has been a congressman for over 8 years, and he's only got 2 bills with his name on it.
Yeah, and those weren't even passed. So, he's been in an elected office for 30 years.
Right, exactly.
That's longer than some of the folks that volunteer for my campaign have been alive. And, when do you go from the point of being a small businessman who goes into office to represent the folks back home to a career politician?
Exactly.
I think 30 years is long enough to become a career politician. It's called the People's House for a reason.
Yep.
And I don't think they represent the people anymore.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. That's all I want to do. I just want to bring common sense ideals back to Washington, go up there and fight for the people, because I don't think anybody's fighting for them anymore.
You're right. 800-949-5973 if you want to get involved in the conversation. If you have a question for Grant, if you want to know what he wants to do, what the difference he wants to make in Washington, if you've already voted for him, if you've been on the fence, now's the time to talk to Grant Stinchfield to find out what he thinks and why he wants to get to Washington and change the atmosphere. Let's talk about that fracking issue. I mean, I know, explain what fracking is.
Well, franking.
Franking.
Yeah, fracking is getting gas and oil out of the ground. Exactly. But franking privileges is basically using your privileges as a congressman to send mail to constituents back home.
Right.
And so as soon as we announced our run back in September, Congressman Marchant started sending out what amounted to campaign propaganda to members of his constituency all across District 24, to the point where the final numbers were upwards of over $200 and something thousand dollars worth of taxpayer-funded campaign propaganda.
Wow.
And now, in a day and age where, with the electronic media and the internet and emails, I think it's wasteful to be sending out mailers, and some of these are pretty slick mailers that cost a lot of money.
And not only that, it favors the incumbent.
Well, absolutely. You know, I've always said the system's rigged for them. I knew that getting into this game, but look, they make the rules up there.
Yeah.
And so, of course, they're going to rig the system for them. I do believe we can overcome that.
Right.
When I was at the polls, people said, Grant, I'm voting for you if only because I'm tired of getting all the mail from Kenny Merchant.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I get a lot of mail from him.
So, and it just shows that he's nervous about this. He's concerned. It's why he won't face me face to face.
And that's what I don't understand either. I mean to interrupt you, but I mean, when he knows he's got a serious challenger, why hasn't he come out face to face and said, look, these are my ideas?
Well, he's got two issues, really more than that, but two main issues that he does not want to face. One is his net worth issue, and I want everyone to be wildly successful, but his net worth went from $25 to $50 million between 2008 and 2010.
Right. There was a piece on 60 Minutes, back in November they did that. And they talked about how congressmen are using the insider trading to advance their wealth and all that stuff.
And so all I know is those were 2 tough years to make money. Right. His financial disclosure is about 1,500 pages long. I lost track of it. I'd just like for him to explain how he managed such a feat. Then he's got an issue where he secured a $2.4 million earmark for a company that he held stock in at the time. Now, unfortunately, neither one of those things are illegal, what he's done with the doubling the net worth and securing an earmark for a company he held stock in. But I think it's morally wrong if you're going to use inside information that you can only gain as a congressman to get wealthy while we're all back home struggling, and you're going to line the pockets of some business that you own stock in and hopefully increase the price of your stock by getting $2.4 million from the federal government. I believe that kind of stuff is morally wrong.
Right.
And, you know, the final question I'd like to ask him is, what was he thinking when he decided to vote to increase the debt ceiling?
Yeah.
And he voted yes to do that. And, you know, Donald, we're going down that same road right now. They're getting ready to do the same thing again. And boy, I'll tell you, if there's ever a time to send men and women like myself to Washington, now is it, because they're taking us towards a cliff and nobody's stepping on the brakes up there.
Right. And it's time that we send a new breed up to Washington, a new breed that's not afraid. I've said it all the time. I believe followers follow news, leaders make news, and I believe you can be that difference. Let's hope so. All right, we're going to come up on a hard break. 800-949-5971. If you want to get involved in a conversation, again, the number is 800-949-5971. You've got a question for Grant. If you want to say something, if you voted already, if you haven't voted, if you're on the fence, if you disagree with some of the things that Grant's mentioned, I want to hear from you. 800-949-5973. Again, we're online with Grant. We're in studio, I should say, live and local with Grant Stinchfield, candidate for the GOP, U.S. Congress District 24. We'll be right back after these quick messages on Conservatives Talk. Wonderful staff, let me know. All right, I have in studio with me Grant Stinchfield. He's a GOP candidate for the U.S. Congress District 24. This district, by the way, if you're wondering which district this includes, Grapevine, Colleyville, Southlake, Hearst, Euless, Bedford, Irving, Carrollton, Coppell, Hebron, Addison, Farmers Branch, and Northwest Dallas. So if you live in either one of these cities or areas, this guy here is vying to be your next U.S. congressman. So you want to talk with him, you want to hear what he has to say, because what he does in Washington will affect us. Again, 800-949-5973. All right, Grant. The Dallas Morning News characterized Merchant as a quiet style leadership. Mm-hmm. And they basically talked about how he doesn't make a lot of noise. He's not like these 21st century politicians who like to scream and holler on talk shows. But contrast your style of conservatism and apparently his style of conservatism, because obviously he's voted conservative ways, but contrast your style and why you want to go there and the difference between you and Merchant.
Well, you know, I usually don't talk about endorsements that I don't get. You know, the Dallas Morning News endorsed Kenny Merchant, and they said they endorsed him because of his quiet style. Right. And they said they would not endorse me because they thought my Jim DeMint style was too polarizing. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you something, Donald. Jim DeMint is a hero of mine. He's one of the few guys that stands up to the establishment in Washington, and I'm proud that the Dallas Morning News put me in the same category as Jim DeMint, and I'm not even in Washington yet.
Exactly.
So, you know, I just think that we are at a point in time in our nation's history where simply voting conservative is not enough. look, I will go up to Washington and I will vote conservative. In fact, somebody said, hey, Grant, it's going to be the easiest job you ever had. You just vote no on everything,
right.
which is somewhat funny. But bottom line is I will be voting conservative. I will not be voting to increase the debt ceiling, I'll tell you that much, which
right.
is something that Kenny did and is getting set to do again. I think we need leaders out there, not followers. And so they talked about Kenny's quiet style. Well, when he said he wouldn't vote to increase the debt ceiling, he told that to some Tea Party members down here,
right.
then went to Washington and quickly did. Right after that, John Boehner named him to the Ways and Means Committee, which is a powerful committee.
Yep.
Now, that's a follower, because I guarantee you John Boehner said, hey, you vote the way I want you to, and I'll put you on Ways and Means.
Right.
So then the Dallas Morning News says, well, he has a quiet leadership style. Well, I ask, even if it's quiet, what has he done?
Right.
I mean, Ways and Means is in charge of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Nothing has happened on that, and that should be our first priority to get under control.
Exactly.
And they have done nothing. Before that, he was on banking, financial services. And let me tell you something. We all know what happened with financial services while he was on that committee. We had a complete collapse of the markets.
Right.
And so I asked, what had he ever gotten done with that? And even though he has no bills passed, which I understand it's hard to get bills passed in Washington.
Right.
He has the least amount of sponsored bills of any North Texas lawmaker, the most amount of co-sponsored bills. Co-sponsoring a bill simply says you call up, hey, Pete Sessions, hey, put my name on the list. Boom, you're a co-sponsor.
Right.
But the problem is, can you tell me anything that you fought back? Because sometimes fighting back legislation is just as important as passing legislation. So I was at a candidate forum the other day, and his guy says, oh, well, he's a fighter against Obamacare. Well, he lost that fight.
Right.
Oh, well, he's a fighter against spending. Well, he's clearly lost that fight.
Yep.
So I say, if you're going to lose every time, I don't want you in the fight. We need guys who are going to go up there and win these fights.
Exactly. And we'll use the bully pulpit of a U.S. congressman. I mean, obviously, when you have the President of the United States, obviously he has the bully pulpit.
That's right.
But what Kenny Merchant doesn't do is, like I said, the guy's a ghost congressman. You never hear him. He's never on any type of show. He's never promoting any conservative ideals. Go ahead.
From a clearly personal perspective, I cannot tell you, Donald, how fun this job would be to be a United States congressman in District 24.
Right.
Because you could be out in front of all of these issues, pounding that conservative drum, and every one of your constituents back home is going to be so proud of you.
Right.
They want to see you out there putting up your dukes and fighting it out. They would be so proud of you. Were there congressmen in Ohio or Pennsylvania who that's not the case?
Right.
Their districts are slim districts, and
exactly,
and they're going to take
divided
you for
districts.
it.
Right.
So I think Kenny Marchand has an obligation on a national level to be out there, pushing that entrepreneurial spirit and pounding that conservative drum, because he's got nothing to lose. A Democrat can't win, which is why I'm so excited about Tuesday. When we win, we're in essence the next United States congressman from District 24.
Exactly.
Even if all 12 Democrats from the district show up, they can't win in the general election.
800-949-5973. I also saw a situation where I believe it was on congressional cars where he was at the top of the list in leases via taxpayer money now.
Right.
Leasing I think his was about $900 a month where he was leasing a car.
Yeah.
I mean,
so I don't have to tell you anything you don't already know, but our country is broke.
Yeah.
I mean, we are flat out busted. And we have congressmen like Kenny Marchand leasing a $900, and if I have it right, it's a Ford Focus. Now, how do you lease a Ford Focus for $900 a month?
Jeez,
I mean, hey, it's a nice little car, but it's not worth $900 a month, and I'd love to know what he's using it for.
Well, it shows the complete disconnect that they have in Washington when it comes to spending.
That's right.
And that's why we need, again, people up there, hopefully like yourself, who will stand against this type of rogue spending that's going on in Washington.
So do you see the trend? He spends over $200,000 on campaign propaganda funded by taxpayers.
Right.
And then he spends $900 a month on a Ford Focus leased vehicle on taxpayer dime. How are we going to expect a guy like that to go up to Washington and be frugal with our money?
Yeah. And those of you who are supporting Marchand out there, I gave him an opportunity. I gave him ample opportunity. I tried to contact him ample times, many times throughout the week. I let him know that I was going to have his opponent on. Each time, his office, campaign manager, nada. So don't think we're just here just bashing Marchant without giving an opportunity. I gave him an opportunity to be on the show, have somebody representing his campaign be on the show. I heard nothing. So obviously either they don't care or they believe they have this in the bag, which is a mistake in my opinion. Or he's been doing what he's continually been doing since he's been a U.S. congressman, completely ignoring his constituents. 800-949-5973. Go ahead.
We cannot afford a bump on a log in Washington, whether it's Kenny Marchant or any other congressman up there. It's time now where the people stand up and say we've had enough, and we're going to put people in there that are willing to go up and lead and come in with fresh ideas and new ways of doing things. You know, Washington's broken. I don't have to tell the people at home that Washington's broken.
Right.
One of the things I look at is it's based on seniority. You know, you get put on a committee based on how long you've been there. So that doesn't work. I own a quick car oil change business. I employ 10 guys. But I'll tell you what, my best lube technician, if he's 22 years old, he's on the floor on a Saturday when I'm busiest. It doesn't matter how long you've worked for me.
Right.
The best is on the floor. The best people that can do the best things are in those positions where they will thrive.
Right.
And that's not how Washington operates.
No.
And it's ridiculous that they work like that. Yeah. Just because you've been there a long time doesn't mean you should have all the power or be on powerful committees. We should put the most knowledgeable people on the committees that would suit them most.
Right. And that good old boy system has failed.
It's failed us.
For Republicans and Democrats. I mean, it's completely failed us. One of the things I wanted to talk about, you mentioned the fact that you are a small business owner, and I think that's important. But one of the things that we talked about on the show last week was the fact that, and many people don't know about this, I talked about this on the show last week, how the EEOC has just, we're kind of dovetailing into social issues, how the EEOC has just adopted a policy that now includes transgenderism into sex discrimination, meaning this: if you're a small business owner, like yourself, like myself, if there's a man who comes in who decides he's either transitioning from a man to a female, or from a male to a female, or a female to a male, and all of a sudden he decides he wants to become a different sex or a different gender, you've hired that person, or they're going through the hiring process, you say, well, sorry, bud, you don't fit the culture of my business. Then all of a sudden that transgender person can now go sue you. They can go complain about your business, Quick Car Lube, to the EEOC, the local EEOC business office here, and say, look, I feel like I've been discriminated against. And so this is what's happening in Washington, not only with Washington, with this whole liberal moral degeneration, I call it, in our society, to where social issues are so pushed out in the front. And this is great. I think where unfortunately we're making a mistake, and this is where I think the Romney campaign is making a mistake, although I'm supporting him because, you know, obviously anybody but Obama, other than Ron Paul. Other than Ron Paul. But almost even Ron Paul.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ron Paul, his supporters deserve a seat at the table.
Oh,
I want to say that. Now, I disagree with him on foreign policy, but a lot of his national issues, if not almost all of them, I agree with him on.
Right.
Foreign policy, we have disagreements. But he's rallied support, and it's pretty amazing how many people have rallied around him, especially young people.
Right.
And anybody that can garner that kind of support, I think the conversation deserves to be had, and they deserve a seat at the table.
Exactly. One of the things that I think we have to do is we have to give way to not just, and I know the economy is important. It is the top issue. Obviously, spending is the top issue. Obviously, we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem in Washington. I mean, we take in almost $2.5-3 trillion a year.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the problem is not only that there's an economic issue, but there's a social degradation in our society that's happening. And the reason why I mention the EEOC thing is because most people don't know about it. Most people who now are Christians, or who have a Christian business, who want to run their business based on what they believe are their values, are now under assault. I've talked about this before, where there's a religious attack.
Right.
An attack on religious freedom, not just against the Catholic Church.
Well, you see what Obama did with the whole birth control issue.
Exactly. But also in the marketplace. You know, where you're seeing now, where people don't realize this. It's not just the public or the federal, local, and state government that's now charged with pushing this agenda, but now private businesses are. And that's what I'm saying. We've got to have people in Washington who can stand against this radical, socially liberal agenda in our society. And will you do that?
Absolutely.
I mean, that was a long way around the question, but you understand my point.
And it's important that we do it, because me as a small business owner, I'm like every other small business owner. I don't want the federal government telling me who I can hire, who I can't hire, how to run my business. You know, stay out of my way and let small business owners operate. You know, the transgender issue, those people are making a choice.
Right.
And I had a loop tech today. I said, you gotta hike your pants up higher. I said, I need him up higher. Now, it's his choice to keep his pants down lower, but it's my choice to tell him to put your pants up higher, otherwise you're going to be fired.
Right.
Now, is the EEOC going to come out and say, well, that's going to be discrimination against people who want to wear their pants low?
Pantsation? What is that?
Yeah, I mean,
pantsism?
But it's the same type of thing.
Right.
When you make a choice, it's my ideals in my business that I want my customers to see, and my moral values that is on display inside my quick car.
Right.
I'm a Catholic, and so I take those social issues very, very seriously.
Right.
And I think it is about who we are as a society. And I think the moral fiber of America is at stake right now. And we do need people willing to stand up and fight over these moral issues. Kenny Marchant's been absent in these fights. I am pro-life 100%. Kenny Marchant says he is too, but I ask, what has he done to push that fight?
And then you hear crickets.
It's always crickets with the ghost Congressman Kenny Marchant.
All right, we're coming back.
100.7 FM.
All right, we're back. And I have as my guest Grant Stinchfield. He's a GOP candidate for the U.S. Congress District 24, and he is running against the ghost congressman, as I call him, Kenny Marchant. We were talking about social issues before we went to the break, Grant. I want to know what you think about the president's announcement about his support. First time in U.S. history, a sitting president has ever given his affirmation of a huge redefinition of a pillar, in my opinion, of our society.
Yep.
What do you think about that, and what do you plan to do in Washington about that, as far as social issues are concerned?
Well, first off, I was taught as a Catholic that marriage is between one man and one woman. So that's my opinion about gay marriage. And I think it's important because we talked about the moral fiber of America, and it's an economic issue that a strong family unit is good for this nation.
Right.
And what I think Obama is doing here, look, he's entitled to his opinions, but this is all about politics.
Yeah.
You were talking about the main issue is the economy. So I'm a firm believer that the Democrats and those on the left want to turn the conversation back to social issues because they think it's going to garner support for them and it's going to get us off of our eye on the ball, which is talking about Obama's abysmal record with the economy. So I think this is all strategic on his part.
Right. He and his Congress, he had 2 years. He had a Democratic Congress. So it's not just him. He and a Democratic Congress for 2 years dropped the ball on the economy.
They've absolutely dropped the ball.
Right.
And so he doesn't want the American people talking about that. So he's going to talk about this. And quite frankly, I don't even know if he believes that or not. I would not put anything by this president. I think he would say or do anything just to get elected.
Right.
And this is all part of it. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if he actually supports gay marriage.
Well.
But this is a guy who'll say or do anything, try to turn the conversation to anything, just to get reelected.
Well, we saw after he made that declaration, he got about, $15-21 million from Hollywood and gay lobbyists. So, we got a real good paycheck from that, so.
Of course, but look, I think conservatives are going to come out in force. So, everybody is saying, oh boy, they're worried about Romney, I'm going to put out a prediction that I think as long as we keep the conversation up about the economy and even about social issues, that Romney's going to do better than expected.
Right.
And I think he's going to get a lot of independents coming to see him because it is about jobs. And Barack Obama is not going to be able to hang with a Mitt Romney when it comes to jobs in the economy.
And I think, too, if we frame the conversation correctly, I think framing, because unfortunately the Democrats, especially in Washington, have been better at framing the conversation of the economy and social issues better than the old guard of the Republicans.
Well, that's one of the things I've said about my campaign, which I think is a positive asset to me going to Washington for the Republican Party, is that I'm tired of the Republicans losing the PR battle over and over again to the Democrats. So I have a media background. It's no secret I worked for Channel 5. I had called out Channel 5 for liberal bias and advertiser bias, but I know how the media works firsthand. I know what their motives are, and I know how to manipulate them just as much as they try to manipulate us.
Right.
So I think it'll be a breath of fresh air for me to go to Washington and get out there and let's start winning that PR battle.
Exactly. And I think that's what we've got to do because we've got the history behind us. We've got truth behind us. We've got facts behind us. And I just want to see somebody in Washington to articulate that, not just in a stoic, Frankensteinish manner, but a passionate way to where we catch. Because I don't know about you, Grant, but I get so sick and tired of seeing Democrats on MTV. I get so sick and tired of seeing the president on college campuses. I don't see any Republicans on college campuses.
No. For some reason, Republican politics has meant that you have to be an old, out of shape, white-haired man to go to Washington. And that's not energizing the electorate out there.
Or to hold those views, or to hold social conservative viees.
Absolutely.
And it's completely incorrect.
And so I think sending young people to Washington, and when I say young people, I look at myself, I'm 43 years old, I feel like I'm about 25. I'm still in the best shape of my life.
Yeah.
As Larry North said, Larry North, the fitness guru, has endorsed my campaign. He said, Grant Stinchfield is truly fit for Congress.
Right.
And I took that as a compliment. But you know what? There is a war going on up there, and there is a certain energy level you need. And I think it'd be great to get a different perspective on things. That generation, those folks that are going in their 70s, 80s, and 90s,
right?
They had pulled this country back from the brink. Well, even the generation even older than that, the late baby boomers, had really done such a tremendous job. Isn't it time that our generation put the troubles of this nation on our shoulders,
exactly,
and carry it forward?
Well, that's the whole purpose of my show, Generation X. We are the ones who are going to take the reins of leadership. Where we take this country is what we're going to hand off to our children and grandchildren.
So with that, I don't understand why so many politicians like Kenny Marchant are uncomfortable being around young people.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Look, we may not agree with everything the college campus kids agree on. I can't go out 5 nights a week and drink beer.
Right, yeah.
I might have a martini on a Friday night, but that's about it for me, and I'm done. So that's the party animal you get in me.
Well, I think talking about conservatism with young people brings a reality to growing up. It's a maturity. And I think that's why so many young people gravitate toward liberalism, because it's a fantasy world.
And if we could become more evangelical with our conservative views,
exactly,
then we can bring in all these young folks and help educate them as to why it's the best choice.
Right.
And for some reason, young people don't think it's cool to be a Republican.
Yeah.
Now, in Texas, that's not so much the case. That's one thing I love about this state, is you have so many great young conservative.
Right.
I have them on my campaign staff. I got the most amazing campaign staff of 20-somethings that you would ever meet in your life.
Right.
These folks work so hard. I got a volunteer who came in from out of state. He is training to be an Olympic speed skater.
Right.
He rollerblades from house to house every day. This guy is hitting it. I got a young lady that she's online doing all my Facebook stuff, and it's nonstop. 11:30 at night, she'll email me something that she wants to do. Another young man who works on my newsletters. And these folks are so great, and they're so passionate about me winning that I just feel like I cannot let them down.
Right, because that's what I tell people all the time. If you tell young people the truth, they will catch a fire. And they will be with you, man. They will stick with you like white on rice, dude, if you just communicate the truth to them. But we've shied away from that in conservatism. That's what irritates me so much. That's what I tell people all the time. I want to go to the campuses. I want to go to historically black colleges. I want to take the conservatism to young black people, Generation Xers, because we've shunned it. But, man, we've got to engage in society. We've got to engage in politics. We cannot be afraid to speak the truth. I say all the time, I want to bring sexy back to traditional marriage.
Do you know, I think campaigns take on the personality, of the candidate.
Right.
And so, I bring a certain energy level. Everybody's telling me, hey, Grant, you got to bring it back a little bit, bring it back. But, I don't think so. And we have fun. This campaign has been a lot of fun. Now, it's been hard work. Right. And there's been times where you just want to put the head on the pillow and crawl up in the fetal position. But for the most part, we have had a blast. And the young people that I have on my campaign, I think they've had fun. They've learned a lot. And I've learned from them, too, along the way. And then you look at Kenny Marchant's campaign.
Yeah.
And their campaign took on the same kind of mentality as him.
Right.
And, they're a bunch of...
They're a bunch of ghosts, man.
They are a bunch of ghosts.
An FM.
All right, we are back. And I have as my guest Grant Stinchfield. He is a GOP candidate for U.S. Congress District 24. And he is in-house, and he's talking about what he plans to do when he gets to Washington. And I got to tell you, I am wholeheartedly endorsing this guy. I know my endorsement may not mean much yet.
It means a lot to me, Don.
But I am wholeheartedly endorsing this guy. I did go and vote. I'm telling everybody now, me and my wife went and voted in early voting on Friday, and I did cast my vote for you, sir.
Thank you.
So and that's one of the reasons why I had you on. But tell us what you are going to do. One of the first things you're going to do when you get to Washington, and what is it you plan to do
so,
after that?
First off, I have detailed plans on my website, which is grantstinchfield.com, grantstinchfield.com. But I think we need to have leaders go up there with bold ideas. And so the first thing that I think that is essential for the United States of America is to institute term limits. So I will write language for a constitutional amendment to institute term limits. How many years that is, I don't know. I've pledged 8 years myself. I'm going to put self-imposed term limits on my time in Washington, and I've said 8 years. I think it falls somewhere between 6 and 12. 10 sounds like a good number to me. And I would even consider, because everybody says you cannot get that passed. At least career politicians tell me that.
Well, yeah.
I've knocked on thousands of doors, and just about everyone I've talked to, except for 2 people, I have 2 people of the thousands of doors and town halls that I've done that have told me they're not for term limits. Everybody else is overwhelmingly for them, yet every politician will say we can't get it through. So what I've said is, okay, we need term limits. It'll take the career of politics out of it. And so what I think we should do is grandfather the politicians that are already up there.
Right.
And some folks may not be happy about it, but I think the only way to do it to get those folks to vote term limits in for a constitutional amendment to send it to the country to be voted on would be to grandfather them in.
What would you do as far as spending issues?
Well, as a former investigator, I want to use those skills to uncover waste, fraud, and abuse. And communicate what I find directly back to the people through stories that I did, basically TV-style stories on my congressional website. And I have plans to hire a seasoned investigator to come work in my office and specifically root out waste, fraud, and abuse. And I had an uncanny ability to develop sources within all phases of government, whether it was the Dallas Police Department or the Transportation Security Administration. I will develop those same sources once I get to Washington, and we will get to the bottom of a lot of this waste and abuse.
So you will have complete and total transparency.
Complete and total transparency. It's the only way to operate, because my boss is the people back home.
Right.
And career politicians forget that. They think they're the boss, and they think they're the smartest guys in the room. I think we need comprehensive tax reform. Kenny Marchant sits on Ways and Means. That's in charge of taxes. They've done nothing to propose comprehensive tax reform. They say they want to cut the tax code. Every year they come back home saying we need to make the tax code simpler, and every year they add thousands of pages to it. So I'm a fair tax guy, which is a national consumption tax, but I'm not against a flat tax.
Right.
So I just think we need to scrap the whole system.
At what rate?
Flat tax, probably someplace around 18%.
Okay.
You have to have mathematicians and economists look at the exact number. National consumption tax is somewhere around 23%. But that does away with the IRS altogether. And so I think there's a lot of benefits. And to read about those benefits, I urge people to go to my website, because we could have a whole hour show on the fair tax.
Exactly.
But grantstinchfield.com, there's a lot of details on that. And the other thing I want to do is as we move away from the current tax code, is I want to institute legislation that would move towards territorial taxation, which means that a United States company that makes offshore profits would pay the taxes in the territory where they make them, bring their profits home tax-free. Right now, we have about $1.6 trillion of American offshore profits sitting overseas that will never come back to the United States. Let's bring that money back here to be invested here. Get that money back into our currency system here.
Repatriation, right?
Exactly, repatriation, and not just a repatriation holiday, but let's make it permanent. We're not going to see that money anyway, so we go to territorial taxation. That's a baby step moving in the right direction of getting towards a flat tax and then ultimately the fair tax.
What do you think about the corporate rate? You think it's good where it's at? Where we're at 35% right now?
I'd like to see basically the fair tax does away with all income taxes, including corporate income taxes, and that's what I'm for 100%. And I would sign on to it. There's 2 bills in Congress about the fair tax. But if you're looking at a corporate rate, I think you're looking somewhere between 15 and 20%.
All right. All right, Grant, what's your email information once more?
Website is GrantStinchfield.com. You can find me on Facebook. Just put Grant Stinchfield in the little search box. I'm there, and Twitter as well, Stinchfield 2012.
All right.
So, hey, look, I cannot get to Washington without your vote.
Exactly.
And turnout has been low. So I urge everyone, if you like this message, I literally am in the fight of my life. I think I'm close. I feel like I'm down by 2 points with about 30 seconds left. All I need is a 3-pointer come Tuesday. And we're going to win this thing. I really feel good about it, Donald, but I need people at the polls. So tell your friends, bring 10 people, send out an email, and get them and rally them for me, and I will be forever grateful, and I'll work very, very hard for the people in North Texas.
All right, we're going to hold you to it.
You got it. And thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's no problem, man. It is a privilege. Man, you are a breath of fresh air, buddy.
Thanks,
I've been
Donald.
following conservative and liberal politics for a while now, and like I said, you are a fresh breath of fresh air. You are that passionate conservative that we need in Washington. You're very, very passionate, and that's what I'm talking about. All right, Tuesday, May 29th, get out there and vote. Don't abdicate your responsibility. If you haven't already voted, get out there and vote for this guy. We need this type of passion, this type of man in Washington to represent Texas, to represent District 24, to represent Americans, to represent conservatives. And I believe we're going to see a sea change happening in Washington. Again, Grant, give us your email, website information.
Yep, GrantStinchfield.com, GrantStinchfield.com, and please vote for Stinchfield for Congress, Republican primary. We can make this thing happen. We can take back our country from career politicians. Our future depends on it.
That's right. U.S. Congress District 24. Remember that when you go into the voting booth. All right, man. Same bad time, same bad channel next week. Get engaged, get in the fight, find out where you belong, change this country for the better. Again, thanks, Grant, for coming in. Again, get out and vote. Do your best to change society. Make a difference. Don't just live a life. Live on purpose. All right? Till next week, we'll be right back in the pocket, in the saddle again, as the Lone Ranger used to say. God bless. See you next week.
Conservatives Talk. You've been listening to Conservatives Talk. Talk radio for the Generation X audience and beyond with host Donald Thornton.